Hello, my name is Arthur. In the last video we modeled up this very quick set of tiles. We're going to add one more thing to this set and we'll make a bridge to go across the river, and it's just going to be super basic. So we'll add in a plane F9. We want it 1 meter, which it already is, and we'll use the control key. We'll just pull it down here. We're going to loop subdivide it. Let's give it number of cuts as 2. So we'll give 2 cuts there. We'll get the move tool. We'll scale that along X just to expand it outwards. We'll look at it from a side view. We'll pull up on X a little bit. And we'll call that our bridge. It doesn't need to be fancy. So this is a not fancy version. We'll look at that from a top view, and we'll go into UV editing. Select all, UV, project from view. We'll project that all into here, and select all. We're going to scale that up so it fits into our map. We'll grab it, pull it down, and leave a little bit of emptiness on the side where the roads come out, just for good measure. UV, export UV layout. We'll send that to the desktop, and we're going to make a map something like this. So we'll send that out, come into GIMP, open that map up. So desktop, circle, PNG. We're going to need to make some layers here. So we'll add a new layer filled with transparency. We'll add a new layer filled with transparency. We'll bring both of those underneath this layer. We're going to color pick a color. Let's do the background color. I have a green pre-made that's for grass, so we'll use that one. Edit, fill with background color. That will fill that bottom layer with background color. Filters, noise, HSV noise. We'll bring its value up just a little bit, somewhere around there. Then we're going to blur that noise, so we'll use Gaussian blur, and that just gives us something that's not a solid color. So we have not a solid color. Then we can go filter, noise, HSV noise, and ease that back a little bit. We want a little bit less than the default value, and that'll give some texture when we bump map. So what we want to do is we want to rough out the river and the roadway. And we're going to make, basically what we're going to make is a selection mask. So we'll use a bright red and a bright blue. A bright red for the road and a bright blue for the river. And it's just to be able to make selections. So we'll start with the road. We'll zoom in. And that was me using Blender keys in GIMP. We don't need to press shift to do this. So E will get the ellipse tool. We want it set up to expand from center and a fixed aspect ratio of 1:1. And with that selection, with the tool set up like that, we can just start at what we know as the center of the circle and very easily pull out, and we'll end up with the correct circle for our roadway. So edit, fill with foreground color. Then we'll come back to the other edge of our roadway. This line here is the ditch, and then this is the grass. So this one we'll edit, cut, and from now on we'll cut with Control X, R to change the circle to the rectangle select tool. We'll go like this. On this edge we can leave a little bit of the circle behind. So Control X to cut that out. We'll delete this circle portion in its entirety. So Control X, and we'll reline up our box tool here. To fill in this roadway. When we want to see what we're doing underneath the mask, just toggle it off. That way we don't get a whole bunch of 1 pixel errors. We'll fill that in, edit, fill with foreground color. Turn our reference back on. We'll come down, we'll fill in this roadway. So we'll just pull the rectangle down because it should be right around the right size. And, well, it looks a little bit off. We'll assume that the map is not quite accurate as well. So we'll split the difference there. So we'll fill that in. That's going to be going right off of the image, which is what we want. Now we'll fill in this roadway. This will be the T intersection, so we can come up a little bit because we don't need to fill in down here a second time. And we have to find this end of our box. We'll just drag it over till we're at the roadway. We'll pull it up. And have it poking out of the road just a little bit. Edit, fill with foreground color, and if we zoom back from that, what we'll have is the corner road, the straight through, the cross intersection, the T intersection, and the dead end. So we'll pick a new color. We'll go with a blue just to make it selectable. Okay. We'll come into this side, zoom in a bit. E to get the ellipse tool. It still has expand from center and the fixed aspect ratio. So we can start at what we know is the center of this circle and fill in the river bottom. So edit, fill with foreground color. We'll pull that back to the other edge. Control X to cut that out. R to get the rectangle tool. Minus to zoom back a little bit. Pull this up. This edge should be perfectly in line with where we need it. So we'll just Control X, cut that out. And fill this line in. Edit, fill with foreground color. Okay, so that's our selection image. So I guess we'll start with the river bottom. We'll use the color select tool and we'll select the blue. We'll take that selection and we'll expand it. And let's try 20 to see where that gets us. Could probably come out just a little bit further. But let's try it where it's at. We'll feather. 25 is about right, so we'll feather that. We'll get the bucket fill tool. We want to fill with a pattern. There's a rock pattern by default, so we'll use that stone pattern. We'll bucket fill that in and we'll see how much that comes up on the grass. Not quite as much as I'd like. So we'll fill it a second time, and it's coming outside of the bounding box because we feathered it. So that's why it's going to taper off into transparency. Now we'll invert the selection because we want to shrink it, but we want to shrink it in a way it doesn't pull off the edges of the canvas. And the way to do that is to invert it and grow it. So we'll invert it, grow it. We'll select a new color, and we're going to use this for my watercolor. So the color's already pre-set up. We'll select the inverse so that we're filling in the river and not the rest of the canvas. And we'll... why is that not filling in? Oh, I know why. We have to Control Z. We'll undo that one of those. We have to pick foreground color in the tool type. So we'll fill that in. That looks reasonable. We'll take filters, noise, HSV noise. We'll add in the default amount, filters, blur, Gaussian blur. Let's try that a little lower. No, that's too much noise. So we'll use it at the default amount. Okay. That breaks up the color a little bit of that. We'll come back to the color picker tool. This time pick the red. We'll zoom back so we can see what we're doing. And we'll repeat that same process. So we'll select, we'll grow the selection. 20 will be way too much for this road. We'll try 16. Okay. Select, feather, 25. That should be reasonable. Bucket fill. We'll pick this rock pattern here, which is, well, it's called slate. We'll pattern fill with that. So we'll fill that in. We want to be careful to see how that worked out. We don't want to leave red in, and we're feathering pretty close to the red, so we'll do it a second time. That'll firm up the edge between the ditch a little bit, but we want to be certain that we're not leaving red behind. That would be ugly in our map. So we'll invert the selection again. We'll grow it this time by about 10. Okay. We'll select the inverse, invert that selection, colors, brightness. We'll just make the top of the road brighter, reduce the contrast a little bit. Okay. Filters, we'll give it a little bit of Gaussian blur so it doesn't texture way too much when we bump map it. We'll turn off the UV image. Oh, actually, let's find something to put into this. So, yeah, we're just going to put a whatever into that, and just for the sake of demonstrating, we're just going to make this a whatever texture, though I don't want to think about that too much. So we can make it something like this. And colors, desaturate, mono mixer. We'll get that sort of in a rock kind of appearance. That's just a little different. It's just something to fill it in. Yeah, I hadn't thought about what we're going to put in there, so we're just going to do that and call it good enough. It's more how to do it, not a perfect way to do it thing. Demo texture. So we'll export that as demo texture, and in the next video we'll come back, we'll load that into Blender and have a look at what we got and how to separate the tiles for rendering. And until then, take care.